Everything begins inside your mind. Before a change can appear in your life, it has to happen within you. Because what you think every day influences what you believe is possible, the decisions you make, what you accept, and even the courage you find to keep going when something goes wrong. Change the way you think, and little by little, you will begin to change the way you live. The Stoics were already talking about this 2,000 years ago. They knew there was no point in trying to change only what was happening on the outside, if on the inside you kept feeding the same fears, the same doubts, and the same limitations. That is why they trained their minds every day. Not to become cold, but to become more aware. Not to stop feeling, but to keep making conscious choices, even when their emotions became overwhelming. And maybe there is something you need to remember today. You are not condemned to think the way you have always thought. You can learn to see a challenge differently. You can replace a reaction that hurts you. You can strengthen your confidence. You can develop greater calm. You can let go of a belief you have carried for years and build a completely new way of seeing yourself. Your mind is not just the place where your thoughts happen. It is the place where many of your possibilities begin or end. When you change what you believe is possible, you begin to see paths you once ignored. When you see new paths, you make different decisions, and different decisions, repeated long enough, begin to build a different life. That is when transformation stops being just a thought and becomes action. You speak with greater confidence. You choose with greater clarity. You respond with greater calm. You stop waiting to feel confident before you act and start taking action until you build confidence. You stop waiting for motivation to begin and discover that many times movement is what creates motivation. And that is how a mind begins to change a life. Not through magical thinking or beautiful phrases, but through the ability to consciously choose what you feed within yourself and turn that choice into action. In this video, you will learn exactly how to do that. Turn your thoughts into practical strength, your choices into direction, and your mind into an ally of the person you want to become. Because maybe you cannot change everything happening around you today, but you can begin to change the person who will face all of it tomorrow. And that change begins in your mind. Lesson 1. A different mind creates a different life. Have you ever noticed how sometimes it feels like you are putting in the effort trying to change, setting new goals, but your life still stays the same? It is not a lack of ability. It is not bad luck. It is your mental pattern. The mind is the soil. Your life is what grows from it. If the soil is contaminated by fear, insecurity, and self-sabotage, there is no point in planting new goals. They will not thrive. You may even start out excited, but when a difficult decision comes, something deep inside sabotages you. Something pulls you back into the old pattern. And if we are being truthful, you are living according to many of the patterns you have reinforced over time. With everything good, everything bad, your victories and your defeats. How do I know that? Nothing happens around you unless it first begins in your mind. It is not punishment, it is not destiny, it is a pattern. Cognitive psychologist Aaron Beck demonstrated that automatic thoughts shape emotions. Emotions shape decisions. Decisions shape results. You do not create reality through magic. You create behavior, and behavior creates consequences. That is where the real power lies. When you think, things always go wrong for me, your brain goes into defensive mode. You take less initiative, avoid risks, put in less energy. You begin to act like someone who already expects to lose. But when you think, I can learn from this, your brain starts looking for solutions. Your focus and persistence increase. Your approach changes, and when your approach changes, your choices change with it. You tend to experience more of what you repeatedly imagine in your mind. If you are constantly anticipating failure, you act out of fear. If you are constantly imagining growth, you act with courage. And action, not intention, is what moves the world. This is not empty positive thinking, it is sustained behavioral direction. Different patterns of thought can influence your emotional and physiological state, and repeated patterns of thinking can reinforce certain emotional responses. Repeated states build personality traits, and personality shapes your behavioral destiny. This is neuroscience. This is cognitive psychology. This is Stoicism applied to real life. Every day, two forces compete for space within you: what you practice and what you resist. If you spend your day saying, "I don't want to fail," your focus remains on failure. But if you start saying, "I am building competence," your focus changes, and focus directs action. Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." When you change your judgment, you become capable of changing your reactions. When you change your reaction, the outcome can change. And when outcomes begin to change, your story stops repeating itself. That is how thought creates miracles, not because it bends reality, but because it reorganizes the way you face it. Now I ask you, are you spending more time feeding your fears or training yourself to see possibilities? The law of the mind is relentless in this sense. It amplifies what you practice. If you practice insecurity, it grows. If you practice courage, it becomes stronger. And everything begins with your interpretation. Today, you can make a simple but powerful decision. Stop mentally repeating what weakens you and start training what expands you, what will take you to the next level. Because when you change your thinking, you do not change the universe, you change your trajectory, and a trajectory sustained over time builds character, virtue, and destiny. 2. Your life will never rise above the image you have of yourself. You don't act according to what you want. You act according to who you believe you are. That's the point. You may want success, confidence, recognition. But if, deep down, your identity is that of someone who is insecure, inadequate, or not good enough, your decisions will always respect that invisible limit. Desire doesn't shape your destiny. Identity does. When you keep repeating, "This is too hard for me. I've never been good at this. I don't have what other people have." You're not just venting, you're setting a ceiling. And your mind respects the ceiling you set. This isn't mysticism, it's internal consistency. The brain seeks consistency between what you believe and how you act. If your identity is fragile, your behavior will be cautious. If your identity is limited, your choices will be small. You can never rise above the image you have of yourself for very long. Think about this with brutal honesty. When you compare yourself to others, what you're implicitly saying is, "I'm behind. I'm not enough. I need to be someone else to have value." And every comparison reinforces that narrative. William James wrote that human beings can change their lives by changing their mental attitudes. Today, through neuroplasticity, we know that repeated thoughts strengthen specific neural pathways. The brain automates what you practice. You become fluent in what you repeat. Repeat self-criticism, you become an expert at putting yourself down. Repeat thoughts of growth, you build inner authority. And here's the shift that few people understand. This isn't about lying to yourself by looking in the mirror and saying, "I'm amazing." It's about stopping the constant reinforcement of the weakest version of yourself. Every time you think, "That's just who I am," you're signing a contract with your past, but identity isn't a sentence. It's the result of repeated practice. The Stoics understood this deeply. To them, character wasn't something fixed, it was something cultivated. Judgment can be trained, interpretation can be trained, your mindset can be trained, and whatever can be trained can be elevated. When you begin to declare, "I'm a work in progress, I can learn, I can improve," your body responds differently. Your posture changes, your energy shifts, your decisions become more decisive. Not because you became a different person overnight, but because you started acting in alignment with a greater identity. A miracle isn't the impossible happening. A miracle is internal consistency aligned with growth. You don't need to become someone new. You need to stop defining yourself by old versions of who you were. Today, pay attention to the things you tell yourself, not the dramatic ones, the automatic ones. Because every transformation begins at the exact moment you decide that you will no longer carry an identity that makes you smaller. Write in the comments, "Today, I become greater." And understand this, what you declare with conviction becomes either your limit or your new standard. 3. Teach your mind to separate facts from assumptions. Do you know the biggest mistake people make when they're trapped in an emotional struggle? It isn't the pain, it's the belief that there's no way out of it. Pain doesn't paralyze you as much as the belief that it will never go away. An anxious person doesn't suffer only because of anxiety. They suffer because they believe they'll never be able to calm down. A depressed person doesn't suffer only because of sadness. They suffer because they believe they'll never get better. An insecure person doesn't suffer only because of shyness. They suffer because they believe they were born with limitations. And when the mind decides that change is impossible, it stops trying. That is the real barrier. Albert Ellis, the founder of rational emotive behavior therapy, demonstrated that it isn't events themselves that destroy us, but the rigid beliefs we build around them. It isn't the fact itself, it's the absolute interpretation we give to that fact. You aren't defeated by the mistake, you're defeated by the story you create after it. And this is where a simple system comes in, one powerful enough to break this cycle. Doubt. Evaluate. Decide. Let's make this concrete. You're shy and you want to learn English. You walk past a language school and think, "I can't do this. I'm too shy. I'll never be able to have a conversation." See what happened? Before you even took action, you had already declared defeat. Now comes the first step, doubt. Why exactly wouldn't I be able to do this? Does being shy prevent someone from learning a language, or does it simply make the beginning uncomfortable? Doubt weakens negative certainty. It creates space between you and the thought. The brain creates automatic narratives to maintain internal consistency, but consistency doesn't mean truth. It means repetition. When you doubt the thought, you interrupt the narrative. Second step, evaluate. Where did this idea come from? Who decided that only extroverts can learn a language? How many shy people speak English today? Evaluating means taking the thought off its pedestal. It stops being an absolute truth and becomes a hypothesis you can examine. This isn't cheap motivation, it's cognitive restructuring. Third step, decide. Now you tell yourself something different. I can feel uncomfortable and still take action. I can start small. I don't need to feel ready to take the first step. Deciding doesn't mean denying fear. It means taking away fear's right to decide for you. And when you act differently, you create a different experience. A different experience creates evidence. Evidence creates a new belief, and a new belief builds a new identity. That is how the miracle happens. Not because the universe changed, but because you interrupted the automatic pattern that was keeping you in the same place. Fear may still be there, but now it doesn't rule you. You are the one in control. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Negative thoughts don't need to be fought with panic. They need to be examined with firmness. You are not the first thought that appears. You are the judge who decides whether it gets to stay. Every time you apply this process, doubt, evaluate, decide, you strengthen your mental autonomy. You stop being held hostage by your first automatic interpretation and start becoming the strategist of your own mind. Write in the comments, I command my mind. Because every external change begins at the exact moment you interrupt the inner dialogue that limits you and take control of your own narrative. 4. The mind plants the seed, the mouth spreads it. Your life isn't sabotaged only by what you think. It's also sabotaged by what you keep saying out loud. Words aren't just sounds floating through the air, they are cognitive reinforcements. Every time you say something out loud, you strengthen that mental pathway. It doesn't matter if it was just a comment, just a complaint, just venting. The brain doesn't classify it as drama, it classifies it as instruction. You say, "I want to grow." But then you keep repeating, "This is too hard. Nothing ever works out for me. I'm just not lucky." And that isn't an emotional contradiction, it's a structural inconsistency. The same mouth speaks words of strength and words of weakness, and when you mix the two, you create noise. It's like trying to move forward by pressing the gas pedal while keeping your foot partially on the brake. The effort increases, but the movement doesn't match it. And then you wonder why you're exhausted. The mind records everything. Not because there's some mystical force in the air, but because language shapes perception, and perception guides behavior. Psychology calls this confirmation bias. You begin to notice more easily the things that validate your internal narrative. If you spend the entire day complaining, your brain shifts into a scarcity mindset. If you spend the day declaring that you're incapable, your mind reduces effort before you even try. You begin to see the world according to the vocabulary you practice. Words act like neurological commands, not because they magically create reality, but because they organize your attention, and attention directs behavioral energy. Now imagine a different approach. You face a problem and say, "This is challenging, but I can learn from it." Does the problem disappear? No, but your response has changed. Your nervous system doesn't go into panic mode, your energy doesn't crash, your actions don't shrink. And different behavior produces different consequences. That is what it means to clear your energy. It isn't about raising your vibration, it's about eliminating cognitive noise. Repeated complaining isn't just emotional expression, it's training your mind to focus on the negative. Look at your vocabulary with complete honesty. Do you talk more about what you lack or about what you can build? More about unfairness or about responsibility? More about bad luck or about ability? If your mouth keeps speaking defeat, your mind keeps thinking about defeat. If your mouth starts speaking progress, your mind starts thinking about progress. This isn't about pretending to be happy. It's about stopping yourself from declaring defeat before the battle even begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote to organize his mind before his mind could turn against him. He understood that undisciplined thinking turns into a chaotic narrative, and a chaotic narrative leads to disorganized behavior. Today, you can try a simple experiment. For just one day, eliminate self-sabotaging phrases. Don't suppress your emotions, restructure your language. Instead of, "This is destroying me," say, "I'll deal with this." Instead of, "I'm not good at this," say, "I'm still learning." These small corrections repeated over time may not seem revolutionary, but repetition creates patterns, and patterns build a new identity, one that is stronger, more grounded. An organized mind begins with discipline over your words. So don't let this knowledge pass you by. Make a commitment to pay attention to everything that comes out of your mouth starting today. Write in the comments, "My words build me." Yeah, because what you declare every day doesn't simply disappear into the air, it stays with you and begins to shape exactly the kind of person you become. 5. Decide today who you want to become. Dreaming is comfortable, deciding is uncomfortable. And that is exactly why most people never move beyond wishing. Wanting changes nothing. Commitment changes everything. You can say, "It would be amazing if that happened." But as long as it remains nothing more than a pleasant possibility, your life stays exactly the same. Destiny does not respond to desire, it responds to sustained decisions. Determination begins when the future stops being mental entertainment and becomes a personal responsibility. Now, understand something deeply transformative. You remember the past in detail. Smells, scenes, voices. Your brain records these experiences. But you also have an even more powerful ability to emotionally anticipate the future. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert explains that the human brain is an expert at simulating future scenarios. This ability is known as prospection. When you imagine something clearly, your brain partially activates some of the same circuits involved in the actual experience. It does not perfectly distinguish between what is happening and what is being intensely rehearsed. That means you can mentally rehearse the next version of yourself before you even become that person. You can imagine yourself speaking English with confidence, yourself stepping into a leadership role, yourself building a more mature relationship, yourself responding calmly when someone tries to provoke you. But here is the point that few people understand. Imagination does not change your life, direction does. Visualization by itself becomes fantasy, but visualization combined with action becomes strategy. Psychological research shows that a technique called mental contrasting can be effective. First, you visualize the achievement, then you identify the concrete obstacle. In other words, you imagine the outcome, then you ask, what needs to be done today? This is where determination begins. Determination is not emotional intensity, it is consistency when enthusiasm disappears. It is waking up on a day when you do not feel motivated and still keeping the commitment you made to yourself. It is paying the price when no one is applauding. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. It is not about repeating affirmations, it is about aligning identity with action. You want to learn English? Enroll in the course. Want to change your body? Work out today. Want to change your life? Take the first step before your mind starts negotiating again, because the future is not something that simply arrives. It is something you build through daily repetition. And when you begin acting like someone who is committed, something changes inside you. You stop waiting for a miracle, you start creating results. A miracle is not the impossible suddenly happening. A miracle is the quiet accumulation of consistent decisions. The future does not come to you. You walk toward it. And when you walk toward it every day, even at a slow pace, what once seemed unlikely begins to feel inevitable. Determination is not waiting until you feel certain. It is taking action until certainty is built. 6. Your confidence begins within you. Confidence is not something the world gives you. It is something you allow yourself to have. Most people treat confidence like a reward. They wait for applause to feel capable. They wait for praise to take action. They wait for recognition before they believe in themselves. But anything that depends on applause is unstable. If your confidence grows with approval, it can also die with criticism. That is not confidence, it is emotional dependence in disguise. Real confidence does not come from how others see you. It comes from the consistency between what you promise yourself and what you actually do. If you need someone else to validate what you do, it is because you have not yet validated it within yourself. And here is the most important point. Confidence is not being certain that you will get it right. It is being able to handle getting it wrong. Psychology calls this self-efficacy. The belief that you are capable of taking the actions necessary to deal with future situations. Studies show that people with high self-efficacy persist longer, handle challenges better, and recover more quickly. Not because they are superior, but because they believe they can learn. Confidence is not thinking, I never fail. It is thinking, I know how to adjust. and that difference changes everything. Think of confidence as a muscle. If you only act when you receive external encouragement, that muscle weakens. But when you act despite doubt, despite fear, and prove to yourself that you can move through discomfort, that muscle grows stronger. That is why a Stoic builds confidence in the quiet of his own mind, not on a stage. Now be honest, are you waiting for someone to tell you that you are capable, or have you already decided to act like someone who knows they are? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." To dig means taking responsibility. It means acting even when no one can guarantee the outcome. It means continuing even when no one else believes in you. You already do some things well, maybe not everything, because no one can be perfect at everything. But there are things you do with competence, and that alone is evidence. Confidence begins when you stop ignoring your own evidence. It starts small. When you keep a promise you made to yourself, when you finish what you started, when you face what you have been putting off. Every action you follow through on sends an internal message. I can count on myself. And nothing is more powerful than that. When you change your inner dialogue, your posture changes. When your posture changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your results inevitably change. Not because the world suddenly decided to respect you, but because you stopped acting like someone who needs permission. Confidence is not something someone else gives you. It is something you sustain. Starting today, stop waiting for validation. Start building evidence. Choose to trust your own ability to act. Let go of the need for approval. Act like a Stoic, building your inner worth every day, grounding yourself in virtue and character. And understand this with absolute clarity. When you learn to trust yourself, the world stops being your judge and becomes the consequence of who you have chosen to be. 7. Your life can only grow as far as your mind allows. Everything you build on the outside first passes through your mind. Before a decision, there is a thought. Before a change, there is an idea you decided to take seriously. And before someone gives up, there is almost always an inner voice saying, "Maybe I can't do this." That is why you need to pay attention to the way you talk to yourself. Because you can have talent, ability, opportunities, and people who believe in you. But if every day your own mind tells you that you are not capable, that you are not ready yet, that it is too late, or that what you want is too big for you, little by little, you begin to live within those limits. And maybe that is one of the hardest prisons to recognize, the one that exists only because you believed in it. How many times have you decided not to try because you thought you would not be able to do it? How many times have you made a dream smaller before even discovering how far you could go? Your mind says, "That's not for you," and you step back. It says, "You're not ready," and you wait. It says, "You might fail," and you never even begin. But there is something you need to remember. A thought is not an order. You do not have to obey everything that goes through your mind. In psychology, there is a concept called cognitive fusion. It happens when we become so caught up in a thought that we begin to treat it as the truth. You think, "I can't do this." And without realizing it, you turn that into, "I'm not capable." But those are two completely different things. A thought can come from fear, a bad experience, an old insecurity, or simply a difficult moment. It can be loud and still be wrong. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He was not saying that you should pretend everything is fine. He was talking about learning to govern what happens inside you. When your mind says, "I can't do this," answer, "I can learn." When it says, "I'm afraid of failing," answer, "Then I'll grow by trying." When it says, "I'm not ready yet," answer, "I don't need to be ready to begin." That is the difference between being controlled by your own mind and learning to take control of it. And the more you do this, the more something begins to change. You carry yourself differently. You make different decisions. You start what you used to put off. You face what you used to avoid. And little by little, the life that once seemed far away begins to move closer because you finally started walking toward it. Imagine two people facing the exact same challenge. One thinks, this proves I can't do it. The other thinks, this is going to require more from me. The problem may be exactly the same, but the meaning they give it completely changes what they do next. And it is those next steps, repeated over months and years, that build a life. So stop feeding thoughts that make you hide from the person you can still become. Question whatever makes you feel smaller. Do not turn fear into prophecy. Do not turn insecurity into identity. Do not turn one failure into a definition of who you are. Your mind should be the place where your strength begins, not where your dreams end. You can still learn, you can still change, you can still start again, you can still surprise yourself. Maybe you have spent too much time believing in a smaller version of what you are capable of doing. But the fact that you have thought this way until today does not mean you have to keep thinking this way tomorrow. You do not have to believe every thought you have ever had about yourself. You can choose which thoughts deserve to guide your life. And when that choice changes, the way you carry yourself changes. When the way you carry yourself changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your path begins to change. So, starting today, when that old voice tries to convince you to step back, remember, it can speak, but you are the one who decides. Write in the comments, I'm in control of my mind. Do not write it simply as a nice phrase. Write it as a decision, as a reminder that from now on, you are going to pay closer attention to what you allow to take root inside you. And if you want to keep strengthening your mind, learning to face life with more courage, clarity, and self-mastery, become part of this channel. Subscribe and keep moving forward with us. Because this video ends here, but what you decided to change within yourself may only be beginning.